Reverend Bill Kuntze. I'm retired. I'm a part-time pastor at Cherry Lane United Methodist Church up in the Poconos, and having a great time up there. Back from 1999 to 2009, I was the executive director of New Bethany Ministries, an agency on the south side that serves the poor and homeless and the hungry and mentally disabled. And started there. The place was in chaos and bankrupt, and I rebuilt it. And it's an agency that is serving well the poor of our community at this time. Didn't reflect on gambling in the area for a good bit. It wasn't one of my primary issues. I'm concerned about poverty, homelessness, hunger, violence, nonviolence, peace. Those are the issues I committed my life to. And gambling was kind of, it was just off to the side. At best, an annoyance in my most of my career. But then it suddenly was about to come to Bethlehem and landed, as I put it, on my doorstep. And so I had to deal with it because I was serving people at that agency who have always got a variety of issues, many of them related to addictions, many of them past or even present issues with domestic violence, alcohol, drug abuse, poverty. And they're the exact people who one does not want to introduce yet another source of addiction, another source of sucking out life and well-being and what money people have. And not only that, but as the casino started to develop, and in the first period when it was open, at least when I was still working there were efforts, whether intentional or unintentional, to focus on people like the people I was serving. They would never admit it. They never really, maybe they didn't even intend it, but they certainly did, because they're among the kind of people who get attracted to gambling, to the false promises of gambling, and they can easily get caught up in it because it's so similar to the other addicting type behaviors that their lives are being destroyed by it. Well, a number of reasons. One is the kind of industry it is, period, which is that it's an industry that produces very little economic effect in the community. Yes, there's the base communities that their governments get some money that was supposed to solve all the financial problems of our local governments and didn't solve any of them. And it brings some jobs, though initially it appeared to me most of the jobs were to people from outside the community who are already professionally trained probably to do those sorts of jobs. But it does not produce an economic multiplier effect. That is, nothing is bought, nothing is made out of what is bought, nothing is sold to anyone else, which is what happens, for example, if what was in this area before, you manufacture steel, rolled steel gets made into other products. Those products get put into other things like cars. Those are sold, and there are good jobs, skilled jobs, all the way down the line out of something that produces an economic multiplier effect. And this industry produces some entertainment, I suppose, for the moment for people, and some jobs. And the dollar stops there, except the large amount that goes on to the owner, the rich owners of the casinos. The second thing is why I always often use this term predatory gambling, and it is used nationally by anti-gambling groups, is that it particularly focuses, even if not by the intentions of the owners and managers, on people who are particularly vulnerable, who have tendencies toward addictive personalities, behaviors, who are poor and are looking for the magic of winning a jackpot, who buy into the myth. I had a guy at a church I pastored a few years back, told me he went there, I don't know, every Saturday night or something like that, and he always won. Well, he was lying. He had to be. He had deceived himself into thinking that he always wins, because they don't get rich if you and I always win if we go in there. The house always wins. So it is like a vacuum cleaner, sucking resources out of a community, like a bird dropping some here and there on spots for certain things like the local government, and bribing local charities to give their seal of approval, and taking all that money out and making an owner quite rich. Well, I was not particularly a public speech maker or anything like that during that period, because just what I was doing and who I was serving, and actually my conflicts would turn out much more internal, about resisting resisting what could only be felt like bribes and what people were calling it around me. But so I didn't go to speak at the city council meetings. Others did, who that was their thing. I was mostly more in the background, talking with people, trying to convince people to change directions, which was futile with government people and so on. When it finally opened, some of us felt we had to do something public. The governor was going to be there. This was like to be the greatest thing to happen in this area. And so there were probably 50 of us, mostly pastors, who picketed the whole day of the grand opening. And it was a beastly hot day. And it was a uncomfortable day of picketing. And boy, we got a lot of negative flack from a variety of people for just that little thing. Just saying some people believe this is a wrong move. And boy, there was great pressure not to do that. The night before, I was getting pressure from middle persons who were getting contacted from government persons, not wanting this damp blanket thrown on their show. And I kept trying to expose the way the poor were being sucked into that. Well, actually, it was twofold. A number of people were very positive and supportive, particularly people in local churches, and many of the volunteers at the agency, of which there were thousands, and many of the grassroots supporters and donors, because there weren't many people who were speaking out or acting in a forceful way to try and resist this, what became an irresistible force. And so some of it was positive, indeed. Kind of negative reactions I got were typically of from the government officials, local government officials, from a few officers of the board of directors of my agency who became personally convinced that the casino was a good that was coming here, that partnering with it would be a good, that it would bring in a flow of income, and income's always badly needed in such nonprofits. And it became for me one of the most tense times in my life. It was like every day a new little effort, a new little pressure. Many of them quite sort of subtle, but it just kept expanding into more and more. And at one point I was threatened with the exact words by a board officer, "You'll kiss up to the casino," and I resigned. It is irresponsible, and many of my friends and former colleagues would certainly feel differently, but I believe that it is irresponsible for those who either serve people who are involved in addictive behaviors or have addictive type personalities and tendencies, to be seen in any way as promoting, approving, or benefiting from a force that is exactly like, and even became the force that destroys lives of such people. And it is very similar to hospitals, like one of our great local hospitals, that will not invest in, profit from, or appear to benefit from tobacco in any way. It's the same thing. They could use that money for good, but you just need to keep your hands clean so you can make a good witness about what is good for life and what destroys life. And though the majority of people may not get damaged by the casino and may have great times there and can afford to make the owner rich all they want, they can. There are a minority whose lives do get destroyed, and one can almost predict which people and which kind of people that will be. And all my life I've represented, cared for, and tried to help stabilize and improve the well-being of such people. I just believe that we're in that kind of situation. You need to keep a separation. Well, after I resigned from New Bethany Ministries, however, one positive effect happened. There was a lot of media attention on the agency and on the board. And with the media outside, maybe somebody even inside, the board voted to never take money from or benefit from gambling interests. And so the agency ended up keeping their hands clean. I lost the job of my life in making that happen. Some philanthropists, like Dexter Baker, who had been a CEO of Air Products, as a result of my witness, within about a week, his foundation stopped giving grants to any nonprofit that benefited from gambling interests. So little things that were positive and good and right happened. But I think that's even not the point. If none of that had happened, what we are called on to do is to bear witness, to advocate for what is right and good in a society, and for the vulnerable, for the least able. That's just what is morally commanded of us.